Vipassana saved me from becoming a miserable person. I'm not even kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating in the least when I say this. A 10-day course in complete silence. There's no talking. There's a complete separation of men and women. The purpose of you not talking and maintaining noble silence is so that you can start to have the internal conversations with yourself that you know you need to have. Okay, friends, I'm about an hour out from the meditation center. I'm still super nervous, but I feel like we've got this. We're gonna be okay. There are so many like loose ends that I have burning right now, and I know how difficult it's gonna be for me to shut my brain off, but we're gonna do it. We're going to do it. Also, another thing I'm worried about is your girl has insomnia. I don't sleep. And I definitely don't sleep as much as I should. And it makes me very, very nervous and anxious. And so part of the way that I force myself to sleep is by working out as early as possible and hard so that I can go to sleep. So I'm wondering how sleeping is going to be not being able to work out. Hopefully, I'm hoping that meditation itself is so physiologically and psychologically exhausting to where I do sleep. Because it's the only way that I see it working out without doing any exercise whatsoever. I'm so excited. And it's really beautiful out here. I was originally going to do one of these internationally, but I figured why not do something close to home so that I know what to expect, and then if I want to do it again, if it doesn't break me, then we'll do it internationally. Because, you know, God forbid you're out doing something internationally and you're so far from home and something happens and or, you know, you want to go back. Right now it's a 6-hour drive from my house, so that's not that bad. That was my logic. I don't think that I'm going to be able to film. I did do a lot of research and see that people were able to film on like the first and the last day. Like when they're about to leave, they'll just film B-roll and stuff. So that's probably what I will definitely do, because I don't want to like cheat this experience at all. So we're just going to go into this experience as it's supposed to be and then try to shoot some stuff later. But if not, I'm going to try and take as many detailed mental notes so that I can tell you if you're interested in something about something like this and you want to know what to expect. But outside of that, that's all I got. I'm excited and nervous and hungry. I'm hungry. Okay, I feel so silly because I was about to send all my last messages and these really nice ladies pulled up beside me and they're like, "Are you going to Vipassana?" I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Oh, okay, you don't have to put your phone away until 6 p.m. So you'll have time to like do all of that stuff." So that's exciting, okay? Because I have a few things that I need to take care of. And I felt like, I was like, man, I don't want to think about this entire 10 days. So very, very cool. I'm going to get checked in and then we'll go from there. Okay, friends, I have arrived and been assigned my bunk. Let me show you what it looks like. So this is what the outside looks like. Okay. I'm hoping that this means that I have the room to myself. Okay. This is the schedule. Okay, so the cool news is I don't have to give up my phone until 5 p.m. So we got about like 2 hours to just send out all of our emails, all of our text messages, all the things that we need to do. And I'm excited. I think I should unpack and just get comfy and we're gonna see how this goes. I'm super excited. I'm not nervous. Happy Vipassana.
Several long days later.
Wow. Just, wow. Is that distracting? Sorry. I'd rather you have better audio. What would you rather be distracted by? Crap audio or this obnoxious black thing on my chesticle? Let's talk Vipassana. This is going to be a long video. I hope that you are strapped in. This is going to be a video that you're going to put on while you're cleaning up the house, you know, maybe while you're on your commute to work. This is not going to be something that you're going to sit down and watch when you are in a, you know, dopamine deficit. Let me binge some short form content. Short form content is ruining your brain, baby. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but it's ruining you. And I don't want you to miss out on some of the goodness that will inevitably come from this video because you try to watch it when you're in a dopamine deficit and you go, oh, it's this, and you dismiss it, okay? Because there's going to be some gems in here. So grab a cup of tea. Right now I'm outside, so I got like the limoncello LaCroix, it's the best flavor ever. And we're going to get into it. Because I love you, I'm going to make sure to timestamp the video. So it's going to be broken down based upon the topic that we are talking about. That way, if you see a Vipassana in your future and you're somebody who wants to go into it blind, you could just skip to the best practices at the end. You don't even have to watch the video where I'm telling you where it is or I'm telling you what my experience was. You could just skip to the end. I'm going to tell you what Vipassana is. I'm going to tell you why I personally did it, and then I'm going to tell you what my experience was like. We're going to go over some Q&A, some questions that I got on the gram about the process, both before I posted and after I posted about it, because I want to make sure I answer those here. And then we're going to finish off with some best practices. So the people who were like killing the game and what they had, and if I would do it again with the knowledge that I have now, like what I would have brought with me to make the experience more pleasurable. This is one of those experiences where it's like, honestly, I feel like having it not be pleasurable was a part of the journey, but I am a huge advocate for removing as much unnecessary suffering as possible. This is like my creed as a tragic optimist, is to remove unnecessary suffering so I can focus on the necessary suffering. And there is a lot of necessary suffering that goes down in a Vipassana course. So if we could focus on the necessary stuff, then we don't even have to trip on the unnecessary stuff. And that's going to be our video. I want to make sure that I get this right. When I tell you what Vipassana is, I'm going to actually use their literature because I want to articulate it correctly. Because on the surface, it sounds like I just went to go meditate for 10 days. That's what I thought it was. I thought that that's what I was doing. Man, I guess we should just start with some background lore. Again, I'm gonna put the timestamps for you girlies. So if you're like, I don't care about the background lore, or you've been riding with me for a minute and you're like, I know the background lore, just tell me what Vipassana is and tell me what your experience was, you could skip. Background lore. Okay, all right. Let's see. I was born in April 19. No, I'm kidding. All right. Your girl had a really hard year last year, 2023, and it was a complete opposite of 2022. So if you're thinking about, like, for some reason, I think of like a stock chart and, you know, stocks going up. Imagine 2022 being like up here and then there's like a huge sell-off, and then that was 2023 for me. 2022, I had just restarted my social media back. I didn't have any social media after going through another life-changing event around like 2018. Had my favorite aunt who, by all like visible standards, had the best life. She was like extraordinarily beautiful. Like anybody would have given her anything. She could have had anything that she wanted, but she ended up killing herself and leaving like her 4 kids behind. And that kind of rocked me because for some reason I think I equated like happiness with and like ease with being beautiful. And this person who I just thought was incredibly beautiful and could have anything, you know, had this happen. And then right around that time, I had, and I think everybody has one of these, a situation happen where you realize that you're not as good a person as you think you are. And you have 2 options. You could keep, you know, pulling the Drake move and living life, ignoring that fact and just filling up on your ego. Or you could take a step back and retool. You're recognizing that like where I came from and the things that I have learned are not serving me. They're not serving me. And when I was 19 years old, I escaped from a super toxic, abusive household. And mom, pops, if you're watching this right now, know that I love you and I hold no bearing against you. And this is not to make you feel better or anything. It is what it is, you know. It's the reality as it is and not as I want it to be. But I escaped, okay? And I told my kid brother that I was coming back for him. So slave away in corporate world, sell your soul for a little bit so that I could go back and I could save him. And around that time is when I realized like I wasn't as good a person as I thought I was. And I had a lot of the habits that I thought that I had left that I grew up with came back, and they showed themselves, and I had like a complete fracture of like, oh snap, I'm presenting myself this way and this is how I'm actually interacting, and I'm hurting people. And there was like a shift. And so 2018, I kind of started the process to like align myself with the person that I was and the person that I wanted to be. And for the most part, I was pretty darn successful at it. Like once I sat in the muck and did the things and relearned and, dated myself and reparented my inner child and gave myself all the things that I needed. And I did all the things, okay? I read all of the books. I did all of the things that the girls tell you to do so that you can be, a happy, healthy person. And it was paying off. 2022, the chickens were coming home to roost. I had just started posting on socials because I fell in love with roller skating. So I've developed this super beautiful hobby that not only keeps me in shape, but I'm like trying to spread it to the world because I'm like, hey, y'all, I don't know if y'all know about this, but like you could like roller skate dance in the street and outside in the sunshine and just like be happy and like it'll feel good. So I'm like making it my mission. I'm gonna get as many people roller skating as possible. This is like driving me. This is motivating me. I have a good job. Finally saved up enough money to go back and save my brother who had been struggling with substance abuse issues. So 2022, you know, after saving up for years, I buy my house. First message I send is to my brother, like, I got the house, like, come on, like, let's do this. And he actually goes back into jail at the time. And so while I'm waiting for him to get out, I'm living my best life. I'm working on my new house. I'm like, I'm Bobina the Builder. I'm at Home Depot every single weekend working on projects. I have brands reaching out who want to work with me. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, no way, I'm getting paid to be myself. Work is going great. I'm traveling. I had like the most beautiful adventure in Barcelona and Paris and Amsterdam that just like in that moment I knew. I was like, this is not going to last forever. And so because I knew it wasn't going to last forever, I squeezed out the joy in every moment. And it felt so good because I feel like that was the first time that I was experiencing greatness in my life that I was 100% present for. That there was no way that I would be able to look back and be like, dang, I wish I would have done this. Instead, no, I was like in it. I was in it fully. I was present for it. I was like, I'm holding so tightly to this moment because it won't last forever. Didn't know how soon that statement would be true. I had no clue whatsoever. So 2023 rolls around and your girl is taking L's from the jump. Like in January of that year, I told myself like, this is going to be my year. Like, man, I'm flying high off of this trip. I've reached like a new level of understanding with myself. Like I'm in it. I'm ready. And then the L's came. It was like, wop, 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 wop. Your girl was taking L after L after L. Oh, January of that year. I say bad things happen in threes, but I completely forgot about this. The company that I had been working with that was representing me for a brand deal shut down. So that was like, okay, that sucks. My dad ended up getting sick, so I ended up like having to take time off work to go to California to help him out. My dad's paralyzed from the chest down. And then a car drove into my house in the beginning of March. And it's like, what? Like, what do you mean a car drove into your house? Girl, a car drove into my house. I got a call and it was like, hey, it's the police department. Just want to let you know, a car drove into your house. Teenager was texting, not paying attention, drives into the house. So that's March. 2 weeks later, I have a terrible dream. And this dream felt different than anything that I have ever experienced before. And it was me in like this huge library. And I'm looking down at my brother and he's on an autopsy table. And I had never lied to my journal before. And I lied to my journal that day because the feeling was so horrible. Like when I felt it, and then it felt like I was being shown something. When I woke back up, it was like, I can't describe it, but it was like a feeling of like being put back into my body. Like I had just seen something that I wasn't supposed to see in a place that I wasn't supposed to see it. Or maybe I was supposed to see it, I don't know. But it felt like I was being put back into my body. And I woke up and I lied to my journal, and I told my journal that I saw my brother happy and, dating a man, dating a woman, whoever, I just, beautiful and happy, when in actuality I had seen him on this autopsy table. And then 2 weeks later, my sister calls me and she tells me that they found my brother in a stairwell, that he's gone. And wop, 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 it folded me. It folded me. This was like April 1st of last year. Before this, April was my favorite month. My birthday was in April. Honestly, it's a great month. Like, if you really truly think about it, that's when like life starts springing forth, tornado season starts dying down. It's just like, it's a great month. But now it was like marred by this, world shattering thing that had happened. And I felt it to my core, because it was like, you were too late. You took too long. You were supposed to do this. You were supposed to save him. So that like devastated me. 2 weeks later, I get laid off of my job. So now it's like identity fracture after fracture after fracture. It's like, oh, you were a big sister to two siblings. Now you're not. You were a product marketing manager for Amazon. Now you're not. You were, signed to this influencer marketing agency. Now you're not. So like all of these facets of my identity were just like, and it devastated me. It felt like I was outside of myself watching. It didn't feel like it was happening to me. Like, what the hell? Like, how could I have been on the top less than 6 months ago? And now all of these things that are happening, and I'm having to confront this reality that is blowing my mind. So I knew that this situation with my brother, more than all of the other situations, had the ability to destroy me. I'm keep it G real. It had the ability to destroy me. So I knew that I needed to not necessarily keep myself busy, but I needed to be 100% present with it. And I needed to not, I don't want to say stay busy. I don't want to say stay busy, because my thought process wasn't stay busy, but it was like, you have to keep living. And so I ended up having my mom come out here, which is crazy because I hadn't been in the same room with my family since I was like 19 years old. Sans some like events that were equally toxic. I had been left. I had lived on my own for like 10 years. And so it hurt to have all of my family come to the house that I bought for my brother's rehabilitation. And it almost made me a little resentful. I loved the fact that I had cultivated a life where I could support other people's recovery, or like support my family through this process, or like, because it's a peaceful place. Like, my crib is peaceful, right? But I felt a little bit of resentment, because it was like, it wasn't supposed to be you here. It was supposed to be him. And I had to work through that. So my mom came first, which was extraordinarily challenging because obvious reasons. And then my sister came, and then I took care of my niece a little bit. So like for 2 or 3 months straight, I was just like taking care of other people for long periods of time. Like, all of them came for probably like, 3 weeks to almost to like a month in succession. So it was just like family member after family member after family member. And I stopped creating at that time because all of my content was like grief tinged, and it's like summertime. People are like, I don't want to see this sad stuff, but it was just like, this is all that I've got. Like, I don't have anything else. I can't give you anything else. So it was very difficult, because who am I now? Who am I now? And I guided my family through certain aspects of their grief with mushrooms. They had helped me come to a lot of realizations, or opened my mind to certain realizations, or made me aware of certain things that I wasn't aware of that were holding me back. And so I thought it might be the same thing for my family. And to a certain extent it was. It really helped my younger sister. It kicked her into like awareness in a lot of areas. So it was good. I spent the summer kind of serving other people, and then I remember everybody leaving and me being like, like no one was there to take care of me in the way that I had been taking care of these other people. Sam's my partner, who at the time was experiencing a lot of resentment towards him, because I felt like we started dating maybe 3 months, 2 months before my brother died, and I felt like I was distracted. Like, I was distracted with this new relationship, and I missed, the alley-oop was thrown. My brother had been released from jail in December, and it was like, to me it felt like that was the alley-oop, and I missed it. And so I was dealing with like a lot of resentment that way. And I decided to go to Bali after some crazy things happened. Some crazy things happened. So literally the day after my brother died, when I went to go and view his body, I had showed my mom, because I feel like people with tattoos, the thing that we do is when something happens to us, one of our responses is to like get another tattoo. We get tattoos to commemorate things. And so my brother passed away on April 1st. On April 5th, I showed my mom this scene from this TV show called Haunting of Hill House. And it's a very powerful scene where, one of the sisters, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Sorry, spoiler. One of the sisters has died of suicide, but her ghost is talking to the other siblings that are remaining and just kind of letting them know that she's not upset at them. And she says, I loved you and you loved me the same. The rest is confetti. And it's essentially saying like everything in between doesn't matter. We could get hung up on the details and but like I loved you this way. And I know that my brother loved me, and I feel very grateful that we had, and he knows that I loved him. I feel very grateful that we had conversations, and I apologized for leaving him, and so we had those conversations. So I knew it that that quote was something that was going to be important for me to get. And I remember showing my mom literally April 5th. And a couple months later, I'm posting grief content sporadically, not with any consistency whatsoever. And the actress who said the line in that show followed me on Instagram. And it was like, what? And I reached out to her and I was like, you know what? I had been going back and forth about going to Bali. I thought, I was like, this is too much. This is too crazy. But I knew that I wanted to get this tattoo. I had been like reaching out to tattoo artists in Atlanta, and because it's much closer to me. I wanted to get his ashes tattooed into the tattoo, which I know sounds crazy, but like it was important to me. It's called a memorial tattoo. And this guy was like, oh, it'll be $1,700. You have to talk to my assistant. And I was like, okay, cool. Give me your assistant's info. His assistant's name was Bali. Okay. And you might be like, sis, you're reaching. But I don't know. I just felt like, I was like, that's one sign. That's one sign that, okay, maybe I do the Bali thing. But then another sign came when I saw this tattoo artist whose work I liked, who just so happened to live in Bali, and I started liking his stuff. And I wasn't even thinking anything of it, but he DMs me and he was like, hey girl, do you want to collab? And I was like, okay, like that's crazy. He was like, you'll come here, I'll do your tattoo for free. All you have to do is post it. And I was like, bet, okay, I'm going to Bali. Like there were all these signs that were like, go to Bali. And so when I DM'd that actress and I reached out to her and I was like, I'm gonna take you following me as a sign that I need to get these words tattooed on me and I need to go to Bali. And she said, thank you for your light. Your content is helping me right now through a really dark time. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this as a sign to go. So this is like in August of last year. That's when I first found out about silent retreats. They have a silent retreat there, Bali silent retreat. And it's definitely not Vipassana. Vipassana is very different. We'll get into that. But it was a retreat where there's silence. You take silence, you eat in silence, you do your activities in silence. And there, because, Deja does it, I learned the art of doing nothing. I learned to enjoy my own time without filling it with all of the things that I had been filling it with. Taking care of family. Because I wasn't creating, I had read this book called The Artist's Way, and I started taking myself on artist dates. So I'm like doing all these artist dates every week, and I'm journaling 3 pages a day just so I can like stay sane and not fall into not taking care of myself. But at this silent retreat, I learned the art of doing nothing. And I had seen that there were other types of silent retreats, and Vipassana came up. But I was like, man, that looks way too intense for me. I'm not ready for that. And I feel very strongly that that was the right way to do it for me. After I came back, I had renewed silence, I had renewed pause, and I was still in the mode of just trying everything to not allow this to destroy me. So I did 75 hard, and I'm doing these artist dates every week. I'm journaling. I did 75 hard. I did 75 hard again in winter. Your girl gets seasonal sad girl real bad, and I was like, man, if I don't go outside during the cold this year, then it's going to wreck me. So I was doing all of these things. Despite me doing all of these things, I slowly realized that I was becoming a miserable person, and that is how we ended up at Vipassana. There were 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for me that let me know that I was becoming a miserable person. The first one was I argued with my sister twice. I argued with her really badly when she came here in last July, and I don't argue. I'm not an arguer. I'm definitely like, there was never any communication growing up. It was always like screaming at people. So there was never any resolution. So I don't scream. I don't do that. And not in like a repressed rage type of way, just in a self-preservation type of way. But twice I fought with my sister. The first time was in July. And the second time was more recently. She just had gastric bypass surgery. And I went out to Las Vegas to help support her for a couple weeks after surgery because, you know, you just had surgery. You have a 5-year-old. That's hard. So I went out there to go take care of my niece so my sister could focus on recovery. And we ended up arguing again, loud, just like not at all what I want to but it wasn't the proper setting. You know, if you have feedback for someone, the setting matters. All of these things matter. But I couldn't see that because I didn't realize that the support beams that were keeping me up were cracking. Okay. Your girl was cracking. So that was the first horseman of the apocalypse. The second one was I yelled at my niece. And again, I don't yell, and I love kids so much. I love being able to break things down to the ridiculous. I love teaching. But while I was there were so many things going on, so many external things. It was like 80 degrees. The AC was out. My niece has like 3 different therapies that she has to go through throughout the day. I had just like come from like the third group. My mom, who could have definitely helped alleviated the situation, was like not being very helpful. And my niece was like throwing a tantrum and she like threw one of her shoes out of the window, which if you ever wondered how these like shoes get on the side of the road, this is how they get on the side of the road, you know, kids wilding, throwing their shoes out. And I just pulled over and parked in the Lowe's parking lot. And I remember just grabbing the steering wheel and just going like, like I was snapping. It scared the crap out of my niece, rightfully so, because you have like this reasonable adult who you've never seen even raise their voice, literally just like grab the steering wheel and scream. And it horrified me because later on that day, she was like, remember when you screamed, Auntie? You really scared me. And it was just like, oh God, like all of the good that I do. And this is pushed to the forefront of my niece's memory. Like this is horrible. So that was like the second horseman of the apocalypse for me. I felt terrible that she had now had this memory of me. Like, but the beams are breaking. The girl's beams are breaking despite everything that I had tried to do to avoid breaking down. And to a certain extent, like, I feel like I did a good job. The bow was still breaking. And then the third one was, so, you know, I've got a pretty like solid audience on, you know, all the major platforms. And I pride myself on like never being blocked. And I'm sure there's people who see my stuff and they're like, oh my God, you know, this is toxic positivity, because they don't know that your girl's a tragic optimist. They lump it all in together. Or, you know, whatever. Sometimes people just irritate you, just irk your nerve, you block them. I'm sure that that's happened. But no one had ever blocked me for my behavior, if that makes sense. And I found that the more miserable I was becoming, I stopped creating, so I wasn't creating as much, which is problematic. You're not putting work out into the world. I would like find comments that irritated me and I would just like troll. Like not say anything mean, but I would just like argue back and forth over shit that didn't matter. Like it just didn't matter. And I was like arguing with someone in the comments about like, I don't know, like what therapy was and wasn't, what it wasn't. It doesn't even matter. And the creator blocked me. And it was just like, am I the, like, did I just get blocked right now?
I feel something. A slight tingling in my fingers. I think it's affecting me.
Am I becoming a miserable person? And it was like, yes, you're becoming a miserable person. So I guess there was only 3 like horsemen of the apocalypse. On top of the fact that I started like gaining a bunch of weight, because I definitely wasn't as active as I was. I think like in the year my brother died, I gained maybe like 10 or 15 pounds. So I guess that's 4 horsemen. Like that was the signs for me that you're becoming miserable. You're moving less, you're creating less, you're becoming quick to anger, to where all of the hard work that you've done to, you know, develop all these new skills, develop these new methods of communication, you're still reverting back to your negative habit brains, like where you came from, your origin habits. Like you're going back to that misery. It's like still seeping through because you think you change, right? You think like, oh, well, you know, this is how I was when I grew up, but this is who I am now. But when you are reached to the point of stress that I think that I was, you're going to fall back on the thing that's easiest. That's the easiest, most natural thing is, you know, what your habit is. It's the same thing as like, you know, you go to a new place and your favorite gym, you don't have your favorite gym, you don't have all your things, You tend to like fall backwards. So I was like regressing as a person, and I felt that. And I had signed up for a Vipassana back in January, and I was on the wait list. Maybe like a week after I had that incident where I got blocked, I had the notification come through that I was off the wait list and they had a space for me. I was like, oh no, that's a lot. Da, 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 da. I wasn't going to go. I wasn't gonna go. One, because it's scary to like go somewhere for 10 days, let alone to meditate. I'm not afraid in my mind, but 10 days is a lot. 10 days is a lot. So it kind of came right on time. It was definitely necessary because I don't know how bad it would have gotten if I hadn't gone, because Vipassana saved me from becoming a miserable person. I'm not even kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating in the least when I say this. I was becoming a miserable person, and Vipassana helped me 100%. More than anything, and I say this to you as somebody who has partaken in mushroom, has led other people through mushrooms. Mushrooms do a fantastic job at making you aware of the reality, stripping down aspects of your ego. Does a fantastic job of doing that. Doesn't do a great job of like leading you on a path going forward of like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do with this information? And you're kind of like left to your own devices to figure that out. And so like, not only does Vipassana do that, break you down, it also lifts you up and says, okay, hey, here's the way. So now that you've caught the background lore of why I even wanted to do something like Vipassana. And the reason why I chose this one and I chose April was because I wanted April to kind of be rebranded in my mind. Instead of this, horrible time, my birthday was April 19th and I went into the course on April 24th. And I considered like this is my birthday gift to myself, is to go and do this. I thought that I was just going to be getting a break, okay? I thought that I was just going to be getting a break. I was just going to be getting quiet and, maybe get the chance to rebrand April. I got so much more than that. So now that you've got the background lore, why I wanted to go to Vipassana, let's talk about what Vipassana is and what it isn't. So for the record, I was clueless to what it was. I just thought that we were going to be meditating, and the way that I normally meditate is I use visualization meditation. I would always visualize myself in a classroom with like an old school chalkboard. And in the classroom, there would be two chairs, and it would be my adult self in one chair, and it would be my child self in another chair. So anytime a thought would pop into my brain, my child self would jump up and write the thought out on the chalkboard. So she'd be like, you need to go to the DMV. And my adult self would get up and she would take the chalk from her and she would embrace her and say, thank you for bringing that to my attention. But we've got this now. And she would erase the board and we'd go back to sitting. And, I thought that meditation specifically was just for clearing your mind. And so that's what I thought I was going to be doing. I thought I was going to be clearing my mind, I thought that's what was going to be happening. I thought I was just going to be doing a whole bunch of that, which had served many purposes for me. As somebody who had done a lot of inner child work, it served its purpose. However, once you heal your inner child, no one tells you that you next is working on your inner teenager. Or, how do you even like go about repairing the damage you did to yourself in like your early 20s and things like that. So even though that had worked before, I would honestly say it probably wasn't working anymore. And I definitely wasn't meditating as consistently because I was siphoning all of that to my journals. That's what I thought we were going to be doing. What I found was that Vipassana was so much more than that. And I'm going to read specifically from their literature for this because I don't want to misinterpret anything. Vipassana is one of India's most ancient meditation techniques, and it means seeing things as they really are. It's the process of self-purification by self-observation. One begins by observing the natural breath to concentrate the mind. With a sharpened awareness, one proceeds to observe the changing nature of the body and mind and experiences the universal truths of impermanence, suffering, and egolessness. The truth realization by direct experience is the process of purification. The entire path is called Dhamma, is the universal remedy for universal problems and has nothing to do with organized religion or sectarianism. For this reason, it can be practiced freely by everyone at any time, in any place, without conflicts due to race, community, or religion, and it will prove equally beneficial to one and all. So that's a really long way to say Vipassana meditation itself gets you rooted in observing your breath to the point where you're actually able to feel the breath coming out of your nose. You start on a very small area so that you can become sensitized to the sensations. Being tuned in enough with your body to actually feel the breath is an entirely different thing. So that's like the first stage of it. That's not even, you don't even get into the Vipassana technique until like 3 days in. While you're doing that, you're also doing mental work of understanding impermanence. And then even more so than that, you're understanding, or it teaches you to be able to understand how humanity, or the human condition is universal. So the reason why it chooses not to take a sectarian stance or a religious stance is because it's trying to solve the problem of the human condition, which is the fact that life can be miserable, but it can also be beautiful. And it's the attachment that's to life being beautiful or to life being miserable that is actually what is the cause of most of our suffering. We're constantly in two states. We are either, unless we're consciously aware of where we are, we're facing reality as it is, we are either living in the past, playing around in our memories, suffering, craving, that creates craving, or we are imagining in the future. And this one was a struggle for me because as someone who uses vision boards and has a very creative brain, you don't realize that you're spending a lot of your time in your imagination, which can also cause suffering because you're craving or you're living in aversion. You're procrastinating. You're not doing something you're supposed to be doing because you're craving a simpler time. You're craving dopamine. All of these things. And this meditation technique teaches you how to live in the in-between space of that and truly understand what it means to be present and to understand impermanence and not to have attachment to either good sensations or bad sensations, because that's what causes addiction. We become addicted not necessarily to the drug but to the sensation that we're getting. We're attached to that, and that attachment is what keeps us in a state of suffering. If we are yearning, pining away for this person who we're not in a relationship, who can't even see us, we're attached to an outcome, causing our self-misery on a day-to-day basis. And it seems like it's that person, like, oh, if only this person would respond to me, if only this person would do this, then my suffering would end. And it's no, that's not it. So Vipassana does a fantastic job at breaking down that level of understanding, breaking down your ego, and teaching you this technique so that you can walk the proper, middle path. And so it's not a rite or ritual based on blind faith. It's not an intellectual or philosophical entertainment. We're going to come back to that one because I think it's really, really important. And it's not a rest cure, a holiday, or an opportunity for socializing. It's not an escape from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. This is what it's not. What it is a technique that can eradicate suffering. It is a method of mental fear purification, which allows one to face life's tensions and problems in a calm and balanced way. It is an art of living that one can use to make positive contributions to society. So it's aiming for almost like the highest of spiritual goals so that you can be liberated. And as a result of your liberation, you can usher in or, shine the light on the path for other people to experience liberation, for other people to be enlightened and, have peace and not be trapped by the habit nature of our mind. So I needed a serious retooling, and Vipassana was exactly that. So now that you know what Vipassana is, why it's so important, because it aims to eliminate the 3 causes of pretty much all of our suffering, which is aversion, craving, and ignorance. Paying attention to what's going on inside of you, being aware of what's going on inside of you, and facing what's inside of you. We're not running from it. We're not craving for something else. And we're aware of what's happening. We are accepting reality as it is, not as we want it to be, which is what causes us to suffer. And purpose is to help you unwind the knots that you have created within yourself because you are living in this constant state of pleasant, unpleasant, pleasant, unpleasant. You scroll for hours, even though you hate scrolling for hours, but you're avoiding doing this thing that would probably make your life better, but you're not ready to do that. So you scroll for hours and you end up losing time and then resenting yourself, and you need the dopamine from the quick access, but you wonder why you feel like it's a cycle, okay? Vipassana aims to help you alleviate that. Did not know that going in. Did not expect just the major retooling that was going to happen. So now that we know what Vipassana is, what it isn't, let's get into my experience. We're going to get into your girl's experience. I'm going to try and break it down day by day to be as clear as possible. I'm going to call it day 0, actually, because the course doesn't start until the following day. Day 0, I arrive to the course. We don't have to turn into our phone. We don't have to turn our phones in until 5. Bet I'm a content creator. A lot of my work is in social media, and so I want to. If this is something good, I want to make sure that I'm shining the light to help people do it. So that was a concern of mine. So go inside, get signed up for registration. So you're doing a 10-day course in complete silence. There's no talking. There's a complete separation of men and women. The purpose of you not talking and maintaining noble silence is so that you can start to have the internal conversations with yourself that you know you need to have. Because you're going through such a profound experience, you're going to be constantly comparing your situation to someone else's situation. You're going to be like, "Oh, how was this meditation session?" Or you're going to want to commiserate because sometimes they're a little rough. But that's a source of you wanting to alleviate, wanting to fill the space, you feeling uncomfortable, you wanting to know if, hey, are you guys feeling this too? Instead of trusting the absolute process. So at first it sounds like, why do I have to do this but there's a method to the madness. That's what I learned the entire process, is that there's a method to the madness. There's a reason why. We're at registration. The separation of men and women starts immediately, down to the point where when you're registering and you're checking in with, your specific gender. They're going to have you sign a paper where you give like a brief biography of your life, and you detail any like mental health issues that you've had, because I think it's really important to state that it's not a replacement for mental health. Like if you have serious mental health issues, you need to be working with like a mental health professional. Severe trauma, like unstable relationships, I think Vipassana is for everyone, but if you were to go into a situation like this and think that it's going to cure something like schizophrenia, I think you might be setting yourself up for failure. But they want to know that. They want to know, okay, who is this person? Are they on any medication? What is happening? So you're going to fill that out, and then you're going to fill out a waiver that says you agree to the precepts. So things like abstaining from killing, and that means like little bugs or little creatures and things like that. From using wrong speech, so lying, abstaining from sexual misconduct, all of these things that would distract you from your practice, you are agreeing to abstain from doing. I think it's funny because I saw someone mentioning about how like, oh, I don't want to have blind obedience. One, this practice almost prohibits blind obedience, and it prohibits blind faith, and it goes based almost exclusively off of what your experience is. But you're not agreeing to anything. No one's forcing you to do anything. It's chances are, if you're coming to an experience like this, it's because you've recognized that there's suffering in your life and you want to make it better. So you're not like, a kid in school who has to ask to go to the bathroom and you're resentful. You came here to do this. This is what you came here to do. You didn't come here to be the angsty kid who's like, I'm not gonna sit where you tell me to sit. Like that's not what this is for. And if you feel like you're someone who's like, oh, I don't like following rules, then maybe like don't go. Like don't go. Like that's just what it is. I know it sounds like cruel, but like there's other people there who are coming to do serious work, serious mental, spiritual work. The last thing you want is to be a distraction to those people if it's not something that you're committed to doing. And if like not lying and not talking is so difficult for you, you got some stuff to figure out. You got some stuff to figure out. I hate to say it like that, but like just the idea that like I'm not going to follow rules in a place that you signed up to go to, that no one is making you go to, is wild. It's wild to me. So you sign your paperwork and then they give you your room. I went to the facility in Jessup, Georgia, which was a beautiful facility. I was pleasantly surprised at how well thought out everything was, but it's because they build these centers specifically for this. This is what they're built for. They're not built for anything else. It's not like they're renting a boot camp and da-da-da-da. This is what they're built for. So they assign you your room, and in this room, I did not have a roommate, which was nicer for me. I think having a roommate would have been an additional challenge, just be in a room with someone that you can't speak with. It's much easier to do that when you're in a room by yourself. I wouldn't have let that discourage me. If I did have a roommate, it would have been what it was. But once you get checked in, we had dinner, and they let us know that after that we would have our opening ceremony where they lay out all of the rules, what you're going to be expecting over the next 10 days. And then we go and we're assigned where our places will be in the meditation hall. Every day, they run through the timetable that you're going to follow, which is a pretty strict timetable. The goal is to keep you so busy you don't have time to do anything else but work on your spiritual practice and work on getting so ingrained with the technique that you can do it at home. If, you forget the technique because you didn't practice enough, then it doesn't really do you any good. So they build the schedule that way. So your timetable starts at 4 a.m. You wake up at 4 a.m. and from 4:30 to 6:30, you're meditating in the hall or in your room. Then you have your breakfast break from 6:30 to 8. Then you have mandatory group meditation in the hall from 8 to 9. So from 8 to 9, from 2:30 to 3:30, and from 6 to 7 are your mandatory group sessions. That's where you're going to receive specific instructions. That's where you're going to receive specific next steps. And then all that other time is you're meditating on your own, or you have your windows of rest. So that's day 0. They let us know what all that was going to be. We got our meditation places, and the day would start 4 a.m. Let's go. Day 1, your girl was miserable. One, I had never sat that long. And I remember thinking at the end of the day, like, what was I doing? Because you're focusing on your breath day 1. Day 1 through 3, you're only focusing on building the foundation. And then day 4 is when you start Vipassana. So I was already like mind blown. Didn't know that at the time. I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 10 days. Like, I could have learned to breathe at home. I'm so selfish. I didn't need to leave my family. I have 5 cats. I left all my animals with my partner for 10 days. Like, I'm doing all this. This is so selfish. You're so selfish. You're such a selfish person. Like, this is what I'm thinking. I just spent, the better half of a year taking care of other people. But in my mind, I was like, oh my God, you're so selfish. Why did you do this? You could have done this at home. Instead of focusing on the meditation and what I'm actually supposed to be doing, you're going to clock how fast your brain moves from thought to thought to thought to thought to thought to thought. You think it moves fast, but when you have no other distractions and you're focusing specifically on this one hard thing, it's incredibly eye-opening. So the first day, probably all of my practice is geared around, I'm selfish for doing this and I could have learned to do this at home and I want to leave. Day 1, I'm like, I want to leave. I want to leave. I'm like thinking in my brain already what the YouTube video will be. I'm thinking about the title and the thumbnail. Why Vipassana is not for me and why I won't be back. Like, this is what I'm thinking on day 1. It was a struggle. Day 2, also a struggle. Day 3, I was like, man, I really want to go home. But what kept me was they let us know, okay, hey, tomorrow you're going to be focusing on Vipassana. Tomorrow you're actually going to be working on Vipassana. So the only talking that is happening throughout this entire process is when your teacher asks you questions about the technique. So they're going to pull you aside right after your 8 a.m. session. They're going to pull you aside in the little groups. I don't know if that's everywhere, but at my group, they pull you aside and they ask like, okay, are you experiencing the sensation? How is your breathing? Are you able to, focus on your breath to 1 minute at a time? And it's yes or no. It's like very quick. So you're not really like talking. And then at the end of the day, there's a discourse where you listen to the teacher, which in this case is Esen Goenka, break down the theory of what you were learning that day. So you're going to start the day not really knowing what you're doing, and then it's going to you're going to get your answers at the end of the day. So, 2 to 3 days of that, and I'm like frustrated. Day 3 is when I start like crying. I think from day 3 to day 10, I cried every day. You don't realize how much your brain is de-processing from all of the interaction that you give it. Like you start having insanely intense dreams. They call them Dhamma dreams, because your brain is being stimulated only by like you and what's happening here. And you're doing a deep excavation, like deep work in your brain. It's like a surgical operation. I'm not even kidding. I'm not being dramatic at all. And you're aware of how quickly your mind is. You think you're focusing on your breath. There'd be times where I'd be like this. I'd start out like, focusing on my breath. I'm focusing on my breath. I'm focusing on my breath, focusing on my breath. And then I'd be like, I'm focusing on my breath. Man, I really got to get out of Tennessee. Oh, I'm focusing on my breath. Man, but I got to sell the house. And okay, maybe I'll just rent the house. And, but like, what if I get a really bad tenant? Like, what if I get like someone who lies about their income and they've decided that like, down with capitalism, but they think that they're going to do down with capitalism by like not paying their rent because they're going to stick it to the man. But like, I'm not the man. Like, I'm not a man. And half the time I barely feel like a woman. Most of the time I feel like a girl, like the 19-year-old girl who ran away from home and told her little brother that she was going to come back and she was going to save him. And then I'm in a room and I'm looking over his body and I'm looking at how empty his chest looks and I'm feeling how cold he feels, and I wish they'd give him a blanket, but this cold doesn't feel like the type of cold that would be cured by a blanket. And oh, my poor baby, I'm never going to teach him to roller skate. My poor baby, I'm never going to teach him how to roller skate. And then you're like, oh, You're like, your body has shifted and you're like, oh, my breath, my breath, my breath. You know, you come back to that. You don't realize how quickly your brain is like a monkey swinging from branch to branch to branch to branch. But you start to become aware of that. Day 3 was when I started to become very, very aware of like, oh, this is what's happening. And the gap gets shorter, you know? It gets shorter. You know, it's 3 breaths and then you're on a tangent. And then it's like 7 breaths and then you're on a tangent. And it's like 10. And it's like 20. Then it's like a minute. And then it's like 2 minutes. And it's like 3 minutes of like pure, peaceful mind. Then, you know, at the end of the 3rd day, they're like, okay, now we'll start Vipassana. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, haven't we been working on that in this entire time? But no, you haven't. So then we actually start the process of Vipassana. And again, I'm focusing on so many other things. By day 3, I have a nemesis. And so Christine, my Dhamma sister, if you ever watch this, but also know that you were my nemesis. You have nobody to talk to. And the work that you're doing is so hard that you want to focus on anything else. And I didn't realize it at the time as I was in it that this is what I was doing. And I remember her coming in and sitting down, and she was just so loud. Like she would sit down and she'd be like whipping her blankets and like fluffing all of her pillows and just so incredibly loud. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is middle child energy. I was just being so judgmental. My entire practice, I would say day 3 and day 4 was focused almost exclusively on this woman and how loud she was being and how frenetic her energy was and how I was such a better sitter and and how I had such good noble silence because I didn't have this middle child energy who just needed to have attention and this person must be an extrovert and like this is what I'm doing. And then day 4 we learned Vipassana and I'm excited because my brain is like, okay, this is new, this is new, this is new. Day 5, I go to do my morning meditation and Christina's in there. She's already meditating. I'm like, oh, of course she is. I've like developed this nemesis in my head because that's so much easier than focusing on the thing that I'm supposed to be focusing on and doing the like deep mental work, that deep mental spiritual work that I'm supposed to be doing. In this session, in this 4:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. session, there's these beautiful like chants that play in the morning session. They don't play anywhere else in the day. But it's not chants so much as it's like it's like words that are like wishing peace upon everybody. And I'm becoming free of I'm becoming liberated. I'm becoming enlightened and I'm no longer suffering. Like it's repeating over and over again. Every day and during this song, there's this man over there and he starts deep sobbing, deep crying. Like it looked like something was being released from his body. Like he's just like sobbing. And then next to me, I start to hear Christine cry. And I'm so annoyed. I'm like, she's so loud, but she's crying. And I'm like, she's so dramatic. As soon as the bell goes off at 6:30, I'm out of there. Aversion. I'm getting out of here. And then later on that day, we go to our next sitting and she's crying again. I'm just like, I can't take this. I bring my earplugs. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. And I'm like loudly closing my earplug thing. And I'm like, just being so extra. And the next day, so day 6, she comes in and she's so calm and her hair is down and she looks so beautiful and all of her pillows are gone. She just wraps herself up calmly and she sits perfectly. And so there's a part of this course where you have to sit very still so that you can really get in tune with the sensations on your body. You can't do it if you're fidgeting. You're not able to get your attention like low enough. I don't want to say low enough, but you're not able to get your attention in tune enough to be able to figure out what's happening until you're sitting very still. And she sits so perfectly still and I'm hating on her so hard. The whole day we sit and do our final discourse because at the end of every day, there's a discourse where the teacher is like explaining to you, like, this is what you experienced or this is what you were learning. This was the purpose. This is the theory. And normally we would sit against the back wall because you're sitting for an hour and a half watching this, this TV. And she didn't sit at the back wall. She sat in her same spot. So now like we're not even sitting for meditation and she's still sitting perfect and erect, and all of like the frazzled nervous energy that she had was gone. And I'm like behind her hating. I'm like, oh, who does she think she is? Da, 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 da. And I got into my room that night and I was like, you feel this way because you're jealous, because this person has experienced something, then you can see it. I saw the change physically take place where this woman had come in and she was frantic and like crazy nervous energy, just so loud, to where she was sitting so still and so perfectly and just so beautifully. And I was like envious of that. And I realized that I had been spending most of my practice, defeats the purpose of developing equanimity of the mind, clarity of the mind, peace of the mind, if you're focused on external things. So I made a promise to myself. I said, okay, I'm going to like give this all that I've got to, I'm going to do it. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to go in there at 4:30. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm going to make true use of this time, because I could spend all the time wishing that I was going home, wishing that I wasn't here, wishing that I wasn't doing this, or I could do what I took myself away from my family and my life for. Most of my business is in social media. It's not hard to just pick up and leave for like 10 days. I missed the whole Drake beef, the whole Drake Kendrick Lamar beef, which is like a huge moment in cultural history. But like the world keeps spinning, and FOMO was high. And so it was like I made a commitment at the end of that day to just give it everything that I had. Up until that point, I'm critiquing everything. Like I remember walking into the dining hall and being mad at the food and being like, I wonder how they're gonna piss me off today. But you don't realize you're like coming down from like dopamine, sugar, like, so you're like in a frustrated mood. I didn't even clock like all of these things happening. And so everything just kind of was annoying me. Day 7, a day after I made the commitment to like give this all that I got, I went into there at 4:30 in the morning. And I said, okay, I'm like giving this all that I have, and Christine's there. And I'm like, okay, when the song starts, usually the song starts to let you know that, you have X amount of time left. But I don't realize that I'm holding so tightly to my blanket. I'm holding so, so incredibly tightly. And I hear this voice in my head that says, let go. And I let go. And as soon as I let go, this image pops into my brain. And I'm outside of the meditation hall that I'm in right now. In this image, I'm outside of the meditation hall. And I see my brother, and he's running back and forth across the opening. And he's like, come on, come on. And he's 12 and 21 at the same time. I can't describe it, but I'm like, I'm sitting here and I'm experiencing this. And he opens up the meditation hall, which I'm in right now. And instead of there being meditation mats, it's completely empty. And he has roller skates on. And he goes, teach me how to skate. And I feel like I'm hearing this beautiful chanting in my head, and I feel like a lump in my throat. And this is like, what? What's happening? And I put my skates on, and I had just taught my niece a couple weeks ago previously to roller skate. And so at the same time that I put my skates on, I see him like bend down like the way that I taught her. There you go. Put her hands on her hip. And I'm teaching him to skate, and I'm hearing this chanting like in the back, and we're dancing, and it's sped up in this image, and he's going from like taking these little baby steps to like dipping, and we're spinning, and just like I can see his full wide mouth and him fall down and laugh and get back up, and I'm teaching him to skate. And I feel that the song ending, like I could hear it, and I can feel myself want to hold on to this image so badly, like, please don't leave, please don't leave, please don't leave. And it wasn't mine to keep. And I like hug my brother, and he says like, thank you. And the song ends, and then this image goes away, and I'm pouring. Like my eyes are pouring. I had like this headscarf on that was just like soaked, and I sat there for like, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. The meditation hall had cleaned out for breakfast, and I couldn't believe what I had just experienced. You're 7 days into like deep work. You're having dreams. Your mind is doing so much work. And I walked out the meditation hall after this experience, and what was immediately evident to me was how light my steps were. 2 steps in, and I'm like, and it made me smile, because in all my bullshit and in all my holier than thou, I'm so quiet. For the previous 6 days, I didn't realize that I had been stomping, that I had been stepping so loudly until I stepped out and saw and felt how light my steps were. You couldn't hear me walk at all. And I was like, oh my God. It was so light. And I felt so incredible. The food that day was the best that it was that day. I felt like it was cooked with love and not obligation. And I was like, okay, I'm committing to this. I'm going to stay. Seeing that and experiencing that, I feel like absolved me of so much pain. And I don't feel like it was like me creating this image because I would have kept it. I would have kept trying to, I had kept holding on to it forever. But I think you're tapped into a different frequency, a different level of consciousness when you are in this type of situation. Day 8, I still kind of felt like something was like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And day 8, something revealed itself to me that I still had some work to do. And, you know, by that point I was tired.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad! You keep digging!
But it was like, okay, you must trudge on. And I won't share what I experienced with you on day 9, but it was just as, if not more, profound. Whereas I think that what I experienced, you know, was a weight lifting off from my past that was affecting my present, that was something that's stagnant. What happened on day 9 was something that was directly impacting my present and my future. And I share so much with you guys, but I think that some stuff, you know, has to belong just to me. Just know that it was a lot like this. Just know that that morning I woke up ready to battle. I woke up like I was preparing for war. It was like the day was misty. I was like, it's a good day. It's a good day to go to war. It's a good day to go to battle with you know, my spirit and my brain. It was a good day. And I promised myself that I wasn't going to turn away, that I wasn't going to shy away. And so the whole practice teaches you how to avoid creating mental states of the mind that cause misery, sankharas, mental conditions of the mind. So anytime you fall victim to, or you allow yourself to fall victim to craving or aversion, it creates a sankhara in your body, in your spirit, a state of misery. You're craving something that you can't have, or you're avoiding something that you need to do, or avoiding something that you experienced and it's stopping you from moving forward in some way. Every single time that happens, a sankhara is created, and it makes the thing bigger than it has to be. I remember on day 8, I had like this nightmare, and I used to pride myself on the ability to like dream, lucid dream. I used to be able to turn my dreams off if I didn't like the way that they were going. And I had a dream where I didn't like where it was going. Like this ominous creature came over me and I got scared. And as soon as I was like, oh, I'm going to wake myself up, I heard like this voice go, Sankara. And I was like, oh my God, I've been using this tool since I was like 7 or 8 years old that has prevented me from facing my shadow in so many ways. And I'm thinking that it's a good tool. And I wonder like how many of us have these tools that we've developed that we think are good for us that actually stop us from doing the things that we're supposed to be doing or facing the things that we're supposed to face. So day 9, I was like, all right, this is not, no, we are not running anymore. We're going to face stuff head on. And I did. And it went a lot like this.
Until at last I threw down my enemy and smote his ruin upon the mountainside.
And I came out on the other side, and honestly, I feel like Gandalf the White. I feel like I fell through fire and through water, and I came out on the other side, and I came out lighter. Day 10 is Metta Day, where we break noble silence, and I can't tell you how beautiful it felt to finally talk and not necessarily commiserate, but to know that you weren't crazy, that other people were experiencing the exact same, sometimes more than you were, and that now on the other side, you have all these Dhamma brothers and sisters who have experienced what you have experienced, and you want to share it with the world because you're like, if so many more people knew that there was a way out of the suffering, oh my God, why would I not give that? Why would I give that away? So your course actually ends on day 11. So day 10 is spent where you break noble silence. And on the 11th day, the course is over. That is like loosely my experience with Vipassana. When I say that it changed my life, I mean it 100%. And I know that that's kind of hard to believe. You say, Deja, is it really possible for your life to change in 10 days? To that I say, baby, your life can change in a second. Your life can change in a phone call. Ask me how I know. So yes, your life can very much change in 10 days. And it definitely has. I don't know when I'll do another 10-day course. It's very, very intense. But I know that I will probably do another one. If anything, I'll do a self course, which you can only do after you actually do the 10-day with a guided teacher and, you actually do it. But I don't know. I think I want to put on my bucket list going to do a 10-day course in like India with like 10,000 people. And, you have bugs and you're sharing a room with like 8 other people and just like the true gritty form of it. I think that I will add that to my bucket list and I will do it. I don't think it'll happen. Maybe I'll do it for my 40th birthday. I've already signed up to serve both the children's and the teens course. And by serve, I mean like help prepare food or just make it possible so that people can enjoy it. And I figure like kids are so much easier and teens. And if you could like help people so much earlier, like if I got this when I was a child, I can't even tell you the trajectory I would be on. But so yeah, changed my life. 10 out of 10. Will eventually do again. And that's my experience. So now I said that I would tell you guys Q&A and then best practices. So let's do Q&A really fast. I'm going to go over some questions that I got on the socials about it that I think are pretty interesting. Because I noticed on the schedule it mentions teachers. So do the teachers not talk either? How does that work? No, for the most part, the teachers are only talking to give instructions. They're sitting with you for your mandatory hours, your mandatory group settings. They're kind of the ones who are facilitating it. They're telling you, okay, hey, you could take a break now, come back and receive the instructions. They're talking to you to make sure that you understand the technique. There are certain aspects that are very technical and they want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. Because if you learn the wrong way and then you go home and you're like, oh, Vipassana didn't work for me, that's not a good move. So the teachers do talk, but very minimal. They try to keep it very minimal. The only time that you're talking is to answer the teacher's questions about if you're experiencing this. You also have the ability to sign up for interviews at noon where you can ask the teachers questions about the techniques, but it's only like a 5-minute interview. That's how that works. There's pretty much outside of that, there is no talking. Other than the teachers giving you instructions and the discourse at the end of the night, there's no talking. This is on my list of Vipassana centers to try. How is the food and accommodations? So I'm going to be straight up with you. I went to the one in Jessup, Georgia. The food was hit or miss. There was day 7, the food was like, mwah. There was like this beet soup that was like, mwah. But a huge portion of it being free and why they wanted to make it free was so that part of your ego dies. You go somewhere, like I went to the Bali Silent Retreat, and I was paying money for that per day. When you go somewhere and you're paying money, you're expecting it to be cooked to your liking. But beggars can't be choosers, essentially. So you're breaking down that form of ego. Outside world, you're a homeowner, you pay for all your stuff, you do your own thing. But here, you're not. You're essentially being a monk for 10 days, and monks get what they get and they don't throw a fit. So in terms of the food, there will be some days where it will be amazing. You'll love it. It's a simple vegetarian diet. And then there's some days where like, there was one day there was like boiled cabbage and I was like, I'm just going to eat a salad. And you dress up your salad and stuff the way that you want to. It's going to be hit or miss. And the purpose of it being that way, I don't want to say the purpose because I don't think that they consciously try to make it hit or miss, but a huge part of the reason why it's free is so that you don't have ego about what you are experiencing because it is free. They're taking care of your food. They're taking care of your accommodations. So you could just focus on your spirit. My accommodation, Anicca. My room accommodations were amazing. There's an aspect of the room called the cell. When you want to have deeper meditation or you're ready to have deeper meditation, you go into this room and they have it set up to where things that play inside of the meditation hall can play in your room. So let's say you wanted to do your morning meditation in your room, the 4 a.m. to 6:30. You can just do it inside of your cell and you'll still be able to hear what's being played in the meditation hall. For me, the accommodations were simple and fantastic. I know on the men's side, some of their accommodations they ended up having to share, but I don't think anyone on the women's side had to share accommodations at all. It's bare bones. They give you what you need: a bed, a bathroom, a place to hang your clothes, a place to recharge. I mean, the surrounding area is beautiful. That's for Jessup. I can't speak for everyone else. They're going to be doing a Vipassana on Juneteenth in prep. They're starting to increase their sit times and work on their hip and back mobility. Any other suggestions that you have? Okay, specifically when it comes to sitting, I'm going to give you the same advice that, this super cute old woman named Claudia told me on day 0. Get as many pillows as you need and like stack up on pillows and make yourself as comfortable as possible. They call it like your bird's nest. Get your bird's nest together the way that you want it, because the more comfortable you can make yourself, the longer you'll be able to sit. I did see a lot of the men using sitting stools like these. Honestly, the girlies who were killing it the most were the people who had their own meditation chairs that had a back on it, so they could rest occasionally if they wanted to. So honestly, I would recommend, if you can't afford it, looking into a meditation chair or trying out a couple and finding something. This bird is wildin'. Okay, he just flew away. Okay, so I would definitely recommend either trying out some meditation chairs if that seems like it would be more your vibe and you'd like to be able to have a place to lean back, especially when you're watching the discourse at the end of the night. Then I would use this time to trial out some meditation chairs. But figure out how you like to sit before you get there, so you're not trying to figure it out while you're there. And you can spend more time on your practice instead of like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. This is so uncomfortable. It took me like 3 days to dial in my pillows. And then, towards the end, I ended up having just like one pillow, when in the beginning I started out with like 8. So get your pillows on point. That'd probably be the biggest thing. Everything else is kind of like, you got to experience it. That's it. I was going to say bring headphones, but don't. Bring earplugs if you struggle with sleeping. Where I was at, there were frogs that would croak very loudly into the night. And so they help me with sleep, but don't bring them into the meditation hall, mainly because the entire purpose of you meditating is to develop equanimity. And if you are blocking that out by putting earplugs in, you're not building up that tolerance that you should be for external distractions and motivation. So don't do that. That's what I got for that. Okay, so we got all the questions, but I did want to comment on some of the comments that I received because I think that they're kind of important. Someone mentioned that they did Vipassana previously, and they said they're not sure they would do it again. It's very masculine, ascetic, severe kind of approach, which doesn't really serve me most of the time. And I found this beautiful because, in my opinion, it was a perfect balance of masculine and feminine energy. One, because waking up early does require discipline and and you could easily argue that that's like a more masculine approach. But when you take a step back and you realize what type of vulnerability and listening, which can inherently be attributed to the divine feminine, you realize that these things have to play together. They have to play together in order to create balance. I also found it very interesting that the women courses fill up so much faster. They're months in advance, way more. So there's more women who are doing these courses than men. I think harmony is what we should be striving for. I know that, it might rub like soft life girlies the wrong way, but I think to go beyond is just as bad as falling short. And when I think of like soft life girly, Queen Mother, Nara Smith, if you think that she doesn't exhibit masculine approach or masculine energy in her discipline and her stability and her structure when it comes to creating the type of content that she makes and living the type of lifestyle that she lives, you'd be wrong. And I'm just going to leave it right there. Like, we need both, we need both. So please don't miss out on something like this because you're operating under the assumption that it's too masculine, when in actuality, we need both. You need structure. You probably could use a little bit of discipline within your life in some way. And discipline doesn't have to be rah, 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 but it could be showing up somewhere consistently to better yourself, to open yourself up, which is inherently like feminine, And it was beautiful. There's something that happens to me when I hear men displaying strong emotions or being vulnerable in spaces like this. So harmony is so much more important. Now, no shade on what this person said. I just wouldn't want anyone to take away that, sitting is too masculine, when in actuality, you're not just sitting. You're reflecting, you're reviewing, you're internalizing and externalizing, and you're nurturing yourself, and all of these things that are also inherently feminine. So harmony. This person said, I want to try this, but it seems so red flaggy, how much potentially counterproductive obedience they require from people who are being taught, that it's unenlightened to object to it. I don't want to put up with that from a Christian church. So why would I racistly feel like all problematic leadership has to come from WASP sources, so white Anglo-Saxon Protestant sources? Just thoughts. One, this is non-secular, which is beautiful. Two, and I think this goes back to my earlier argument, no one is forcing you to do anything. No one is saying, if you don't do this, we're going to blacklist you from the community. No one is saying we're going to disparage you. No one is saying you're going to go to hell. So it's not blind obedience. And it's actually taught throughout the course. Like, don't believe it. Like, even while I'm telling you my experience right now, this is my experience. Do not take my experience as like, this is what's going to happen to me and da-da-da-da-da. Experience it for yourself. Give it give it a trial, try it. If you're like, this wasn't for me, that's your experience, and that belongs to you, and no one should be able to sway it or influence or anything like that. So the idea of like blind obedience, you're not obeying anything. You're showing up because I have this pain, this existential angst that is being human, and I'd like to find ways to alleviate the suffering or deepen my meditation practices or deepen the connection with myself or, not make people around me miserable. Like if you're externally motivated, I thought I was internally motivated, and I realized I'm much more externally motivated than I thought for the simple fact that I don't want to make the people around me miserable, and I damn sure don't want to do it unconsciously and thinking that I'm doing right by people while I'm actually like hurting them. So no blind obedience. If you don't want to follow the rules, don't mess it up for anybody else and just leave. And there's some people who did. I think like one person left like on day 2, and it's a bummer because it's like, don't quit. I hate using the word magic because I don't want people to think that it's like juju. It's work. It's work. Do the work. You will reap the benefits of the work. Which brings me to the next comment where someone said that they also sat it. One thing that stuck out to them, they did their sit in Northern California, and that there was a large number of people hoping for a cure and homeless people availing themselves of the free shelter and free food. It's not a cure. It's not like you're praying to some entity and saying, here, cure me. So I can understand that. The second part, there's homeless people availing themselves of free food and da, da, da. This shit is work, okay? If homeless people are sitting through Vipassana for 10 days for free food and they're doing the mandatory sits, let them. Let them. Because it's not like it's not like a food assembly line. There's easier ways to get food and shelter than attending Vipassana courses. If they do the time, then let them. Let them. Please don't get discouraged by anything like that. It's for the good of all people, because if more people are, paying attention internally and doing what they need to do and observing what they're doing and how they're contributing to the world, it makes it better for everybody, okay? Everybody wins. Everybody wins. I'm 100% okay with that. That's it. Whew. Okay, I know that was a lot. If you actually watched this all the way to the end, bless you so much. You're awesome. I appreciate you. I know that was a lot, but I was excited to share. And I wanted to give as much of a well-rounded experience, of at least my experience, as possible. I want to leave you with 2 things. If you are someone who is thinking of doing Vipassana, and you have any questions or concerns or anything like that, hit me up, DM me. Like, I will gladly respond. How I'm maintaining Vipassana in my current life, I'm doing my Vipassana meditations twice a day, and it seems like a lot, but I've literally just cut an hour from social media on both ends of my day, and I'm able to maintain it. And I've already signed up to be of service in other courses. Eventually, maybe I'll serve a 10-day course. Don't know. Don't have the bandwidth right now, but maybe in the future. There's so many ways to connect. There's a WhatsApp group. There is virtual sitting so that you can perform your meditations with other people, which I'm really enjoying. There's meditations held every single hour so that you're just not left hanging. You still have Dhamma and brothers and sisters to kind of walk the path with, which I truly appreciate. And if you are thinking about it, the only advice that I can give you is don't quit. It will suck. And there will be times where you will want to quit. But if you stay and you honor yourself in this way, you might be very, very surprised. One of my Dhamma sisters, Chloe, had her bags packed on day 6, and she found our assistant teacher, and she told her that she was going to leave. And the teacher told her that the purpose of her coming to Vipassana, the purpose of what we're learning here, is not to stop the rain. It's to learn how to dance in the rain. And if you are someone who feels like your life could benefit from learning how to dance in the rain, then show up and dance. I hope you dance, okay? I hope that you dance, and I hope that you give it all you've got. I hope that you go there and you focus on your practice and you recognize and you pay attention to yourself and pay attention to the things you're dreaming about and, the things that you're thinking about. When the thought comes into your head and you're like, I don't know, I haven't thought of this person in years. Think of the trend between the people that you're thinking of, because there's probably some stuff that you need to unearth. And if you do, you will be handsomely rewarded. I think that is all I have for you. Oh, I guess I didn't even really share the benefits. I feel lighter. I love life more than I did before. I am so much more patient. And I was already a pretty patient person, but I feel so much more patient. My insomnia is all but gone. The weeks leading up to this, I had really bad insomnia. At one point, I slept like maybe 4 hours over the span of 4 days. Like it was really, really bad. My insomnia is gone. I feel myself so much more aware of myself and like external distractions. My phone addiction gone. My aversion addiction gone. I'm not procrastinating on anything. I'm working top to bottom through lists, and it's wild to me because before you couldn't have told me. You'd have been like, I would have been like, oh, I'm so ADHD, I can't do this. Vipassana has helped me more than Adderall and Vyvanse have. That's my personal experience. I feel so much more mental clarity. I feel like I'm not bogged down. I can feel little waves of like wanting dopamine rushes and be like, I'll just scroll in and being like, this will pass. Why do you want to do this? What are, oh, because you're avoiding this? Well, let's do this instead. And I'm able to move myself in ways that I wasn't able to before. I don't feel like I'm running from anything in my life. I feel I am perfectly in the present, and I don't know what would have got me right. And when you think like 10 days is a long time, it's not that long for peace, you know? It's truly not that long for peace. So that is all that I have for you, friends. I hope that I've answered your questions or piqued some interest or given you the courage to go through this extremely challenging thing. And I appreciate you so much for being here. That is it. That is all that I have for you. And I will see you in the next one.